Hi, my name is Terry Lee Bivona, and I'm 52 years old. I've been a hospice nurse for the past 12 years, and about 2 months was quite abruptly diagnosed myself with stage 4 bone and prostate cancer, and it's so pervasive throughout my body that I actually have a 3 to 6 month prognosis, and I've become myself a hospice patient. And what I'm doing in this video series of these little vignettes is sharing some of the most amazing experiences that I've had actually in my 30 years of healthcare, but a lot of these from my hospice past dozen or so years. Patient and family events that have really changed my life, both in what they've taught me and what I was able to experience with these people in some of their most difficult transitions in life, which is dealing with dying. So this wonderful story I'm about to tell you, I'd like to give a little title, and this is called The Last Word. And the scenario here is there was a man who had a diffuse amount of cancer throughout his body, and I was one of the registered nurses taking care of him, and had visited his home. He had 7 children. His wife had since passed, and he was in agonizing pain. There were a couple of different things we were doing, some medicine under his tongue, some liquid medicine, and actually had a little medicine pump kind of set up like a little Walkman radio and could plug it in under his skin like a subcutaneous injection, and he could get continuous little amounts of pain medicine and then little bursts of medicine every 10 or 15 minutes as needed. And even with all those settings and options, this man was just in agonizing, writhing pain. It was really difficult for him and his 7 children to be at home, and it was just unbearable. So we brought him into the hospital, and what we tried to do was actually we could do more concentrated medicine in the hospital than we could do at his home. So with the pharmacist team, actually concentrated the medicine more. One of the things that's kind of taught and known in hospice care and also just in pain management is a lot of times when people are really in agonizing suffering and that they might be close to dying, as long as their body is still preoccupying all of their energy, whether it's their spiritual energy or their psychological energy, and they're ready to go to the heavens or whatever they call leaving, whether that's heaven in the Christian view or reincarnation or nirvana, whatever that next step is. A lot of people when they're suffering emotionally, spiritually, or especially physically, it seems to bind all that energy that even if they're ready and knowingly ready to let go, the body just doesn't seem to be able to let soul do that or spirit do that. So that's one of the important aspects of really looking at good, compassionate patient care. And that's where we were with this man. He was suffering was just unrelenting. And again, writhing and all, so tough to watch, and let alone the family being there and feeling so helpless. So we brought him into the hospital. We increased the medicines. And as we began to do that over about an hour and a half, his breathing calmed down, his writhing calmed down a lot. And to get back to the point about comfort, a lot of times when people finally do get their body comfortable, and breathing calm down, a lot of times that's when they'll step out and that's when they'll die, because they finally achieve that sense of peace. And with hospice care, the goal is really to achieve that comfort. We're not trying to help somebody die sooner. The goal is not to expedite their journey home to the heavens. It's really to look at the symptoms that a patient's having right then and the distress they're having right then and really deal with that. So we were able to do that in about an hour and a half. Myself, a nurse practitioner, and actually it was 2 nurse practitioners on this occasion, along with the 7 children of this man that he loved so dearly at the bedside. He was able to calm down. So the last 20 or 30 minutes of his time here on earth in that physical body was really watching him achieve a sense of peace. And to watch him do that also meant that his family was able to do that as well. And it actually gave room for more tears and a different kind of tears. Earlier in the evening, prior, and that day, a lot of his suffering was their suffering too, and they were as tightly wound as he was. But as things began to calm down that last 30 minutes, they began to do a different kind of tears to really help let him go, and realizing that he was on his way home. And for them, Christian, their values and beliefs, so he was certainly heading home to heaven and to Jesus. And the tears were almost a sense of relief for them, for everyone's easing of their suffering. So at a certain point, at around 2 hours, he did stop breathing. It was a peaceful death, or I use the term spiritual graduation. especially with people who do affirm that there's a next life for them, that it really isn't a complete endpoint. Maybe it is for the physical body that that person's in, but for them spiritually, whether body, soul, or spirit, they really are heading home to the heavens. So this man was able to achieve that in a peaceful way, and those children witnessing the peace that he had was very, very important to them, because that's what they're going to remember most. So at the foot of the bed actually was his youngest daughter of those 7, and was the apple of his eye, and everyone in the family kind of rolled their eyes, because he and his daughter really did have a special bond. It was more of a camaraderie, almost in sharing the meaning of life in a very special way. It was private, it was important, and it was mature in an interesting way, because they really talked to each other. From what the other siblings said, it was profound and it was important, and everybody seemed to give their own range of reference to the relationship between that youngest daughter and this man. So he stopped breathing, and the nurse practitioners, both of them, came back into the patient's room or were there, and usually that's validated by listening with the stethoscope and watching for 1 to possibly 3 minutes and make sure there's no pulse or no respirations, no breathing, and that the physical body really has stopped. And that happened, and a different kind of tears now, because it was clear the man had passed. And I was out in the nurse's station kind of bearing witness to all of this as kind of a side view. Family members in and out of the room, a lot of tears, kind of getting their composure, stepping back in the room. So it had been about 6 minutes since those pulse was validated not to be there, and no respirations. At that point, the youngest daughter had come to the head of the bed. She had been at the foot of the bed the whole time. And she came up and she was by his left shoulder. What I'm about to tell you was actually witnessed by the other 6 siblings and the 2 nurse practitioners. Is at the point where the daughter was up at the head of the bed by this man's left shoulder, he opened his eyes, he looked directly in the eyes of this youngest daughter, made direct eye contact with her, which of course was totally startling to everyone, and he spoke. And he said to her, he said, "I love you." He closed his eyes again, he turned his head slightly to the left, and again he stopped breathing. So it was quite startling and quite amazing to watch this, because you have 2 seasoned nurse practitioners who know quite well how to look for respirations and a pulse, and the family had witnessed that it had also been about 6 minutes or so since this man had taken his last breath, which according to standard medical practice, someone stops breathing for up to 4 minutes, then we just assume everything in the physical body is shut down. But somehow the love for this daughter and the need for this man to have this great last word was so profound that in a spiritual way he was actually to stir up his spiritual energy and bring that back into his body, to animate his body, to give this incredibly profound message to the apple of his eye, and that was the terms, "I love you." And at that point, everyone cried again, and there was a lot of confusion, obviously. But in hospice care, the term is rally, R-A-L-L-Y. And the idea is a lot of times people in their spiritual energy really do kind of get a little bit of access to the heavens while their physical body's winding down, and that spiritual energy can come back in and kind of surge in a good way the physical body for a rally, whether that's to say something or do something, or even to have kind of a spiritual vision, and then for soul or spirit to step out. So that man certainly got the last word, and the last word being "I love you" are certainly the words that we all hope for and wish for anyone as they spiritually graduate back home to God or to the heavens. Thank you.